Diesel Laptops, 150 employees, top 500 fastest growing companies in the world, over 50,000 clients worldwide, all achieved in 5 years. Today's guest, Tyler Robertson, is the CEO and founder of Diesel Laptops. He started this company in his garage in 2015, thinking it would be a nice way to stay home with his kids and make some money while doing it. Fast forward 5 years and he has achieved much more than he ever thought possible. Diesel Laptops provide specialized diesel diagnostic equipment for the commercial truck, construction, automobile, agriculture, and off-highway markets. Owning a business is a major achievement in itself, but managing to go from almost nothing to a major company that is continuously growing and bettering itself in 5 years is even bigger. Obviously, this process comes with its ups and downs, with a lot of decisions to be made along the way. Let's hear how Tyler did it. Welcome to the Cutting Edge Garage Podcast.
Tyler Robertson, thank you for taking the time to be with us today. Tell us a little bit about who Tyler Robertson is.
Yeah. For those that don't know me, just an average guy, I guess, right? So I started my own business. I quit my job about 5 years ago and did this thing at Diesel Laptops. So 5 years ago in March was our 5-year anniversary. And it was me in my garage, dining room table, and through a lot of good luck and fortune stance, ended up here 5 years later. We have about 150 employees now, and growing fast still. So it's been a crazy ride the last couple of years, and hopefully the thing just keeps going.
So quitting your job was a good thing then.
You know, I'm gonna tell you a story here on how that all went down, because I did not want to quit my job. So what happened here is I was selling diagnostic tools part-time as a side business, and I worked for a truck dealership. So my employer was actually my biggest customer, and they're also my biggest vendor, because I would buy the pieces from them and I'd put kits together, and they would actually buy the kits and resell them to their customers. And of course, business started to spread. I'm working nights all the time and weekends on the side business, plus doing my regular job at the dealership. And then one day the owner's daughter, she came to me and said, "Hey, Tyler, good news. We're going to give you we're going to double your bonus this year and give you a pretty hefty raise." I'm like, "Well, that's odd. It's March. We just had our annual review here in December. My bonus, like, I feel like there's a catch coming on." She goes, "Yeah, but I need you to quit your side business. It's causing conflict." I'm like, okay. So, I did what I think every good son does. They call their dad for advice. And my dad hates hearing this story, but I call my dad. Like, "Dad, what do I do?" He's like, "Well, your wife works at home. You have a 1-year-old and 3-year-old. She's a stay-at-home wife, mom. You got a 1-year-old, you got a 3-year-old. You've been at that job for about 10 years. You get a great paycheck. You make great money for what you do there. I think you need to quit your side business." I'm like, okay, makes sense. It's a safe thing to do. And then I went home and talked to the wife, and she just said, "Screw that. Like, quit your job, put your 2 weeks notice in. Let's try to make it work." So I never intended to start Diesel Laptops. I just intended to be a side gig to make beer money, essentially. And, I think a lot of people probably wish I was still just doing this on the side business, making beer money, but here we are today selling a lot of diagnostic tools.
Probably have a pretty big kegerator by now, I'm thinking.
Yeah. I will say I got a well-stocked beer fridge and liquor cabinet, so I'm doing pretty well on that side of the equation.
There you go. So tell us a little bit about Diesel Laptops, what you guys do, what's unique that you bring to heavy truck diagnostics, and what separates you from everybody else.
Yeah, so I think what it really started with, and how I got started, was just solving the problem of people wanting a diagnostic tool. And at first, you got to think back 7 or 8 years ago. If you worked on a Cummins engine, it was pretty much you needed Cummins software and an adapter and a laptop. And then if you wanted Detroit, you had to buy Detroit software and all that. And you kind of look back through the time, and you had some other companies doing the multi-brand stuff at the time. Norgon was the big one that was kind of taken off if you look back 8 or 9 years ago. And that's really, kind of where it got started, was just providing people a great diagnostic tool so they could do what they need and be consultative and not oversell them, but not undersell them, give them the right tool. And, as time got on, what kind of happened here is we sold the tools, people were happy, but then they had problems. They didn't know how to install software. They didn't know how to configure it. They didn't know how to license it. When things went connect to the vehicle, they didn't know what to do. So they called the guy they bought it from, which was me. So you really quickly learned you need to have great tech support. So at Diesel Laptops, we have over 30 people now in our tech support department, and they're not just IT pros, but they're actual diesel technicians. So when people have a problem, we go beyond just helping them make sure their software opens and connects. We actually have diesel technicians that help walk them through troubleshooting and repair information and all those things. So that was number one. The other thing that we learned early on is, although you give somebody a great diagnostic tool and it tells them the code, they don't know what to do with it, or they got 5 codes and they don't know what to do with it. So we had to essentially build all of our own repair information and it started with fault codes, but now we do wiring diagrams, component locators, labor time guides, remove and replace instructions, torque specs, maintenance intervals, all those things you need to properly fix a truck. And then the other major piece of that puzzle missing was the training side. And again, that was just purely accidental. We kind of realized we're selling people these powerful diagnostic tools. Texas really where it really took off with, and they're buying these tools and they don't know how to use the software. And we're like, okay, we got to and they return it because they're like, oh, it doesn't work. And like, well, it does work. You just don't know how to use it. So we had to develop that training platform. And then we really quickly figured out that a lot of technicians, they buy the tool, they know how to use it, but they don't have the right technician skills to properly diagnose things. So then we branched into electrical training classes, after treatment training classes, CAN bus, hydraulic systems, specific engine courses. And we do those through hands-on and we do those through online. So when we talk to clients, we just don't talk about the diagnostic tool. We talk about, look, you need all those pieces in your shop to be successful. And that's really what everyone needs at the end of the day, beyond just, hey, here's a diagnostic tool, go to work. And I think that's one of the big things that's really separated ourselves from a lot of the traditional places where you would buy diagnostic tools. And so far it's working, and we're just going to keep going down that same path.
Yeah. So that key staple of entrepreneurship, of adding value, sounds like, you caught on to that like immediately.
Yeah. I mean, and it's a fear. There's a little bit of a fear thing there too, right? Because, as we're selling diagnostic tools, this happened to me with a couple different product lines where we go out there, we really learn well how it works, and we learn the right things to say and the right way to market it. And all of a sudden we're successful at it, and everybody else will start selling the same thing. So I'm like, right. Oh man, this is not a good long-term strategy here. We gotta be more than just a reseller of a product. We got to provide a ton of value, like you said, to those people. So, it sucks, but like literally the last 5 years, we take every nickel and profit we have just so we can go build more repair and promotion, more training classes, hire more support techs. And we call it building the moat around our business. And the bigger and deeper that moat is, the more difficult it is for anyone to come along and really compete with us head on. And that's, again, I go to fear, like, hey, that's, that we got this fast, this big, this fast. Somebody else can probably do the same thing. So we gotta keep the pedal to the floor. Otherwise, I don't want to be, one of the competitors we got now, kind of struggling and trying to get business. I'd rather be the guy pushing change and making the world a little bit better place.
Yeah, guys, especially in the heavy truck industry, the industry itself has gone through a quantum leap in technology over the last few years. But the two big guys on the block have had the opportunity to become complacent. So that creates a lot of opportunity because they weren't bringing the value. In many cases, they weren't bringing the raw product. They weren't innovating.
Yeah, exactly. And I think so automotive, I think automotive, there are a ton of tools out there, right? How many automotive diagnostic scan tools are there? I don't know if could I even count them all? I don't think so, right?
They're a dime a dozen.
They are, right? And what's the difference between an Autel and a Launch and a Snap-on? I don't know. It depends on what you're hooking up to. And there's just, it's hard to really say those things. And those are sold through that traditional model. You got manufacturer who sells to a distributor, who sells to a dealer, who sells to the end user. And that last guy, that dealer, he doesn't really need to know too much. Customers are kind of walking in there. They're not expecting that guy to support them and do all those things. And then that way, that industry works that way. Technology's there, a lot of competitors. HE, I don't think is the same way. I think if you try to use that same model, and some of the competitors we have tried that, and they may get a good initial burst of sales, but it quickly fades when customers start getting overpromised and underdelivered from the person that sold them the tool. And in the long run, it really hurts them more than it helps them. I know some of those companies are referring to. I mean, some of them buy tools from people like me and people like you because they know what they have doesn't work well, right. And they don't want to study their relationship, so they got to go take care of their customer at the end of the day. And I keep saying, man, someone at some corporate office somewhere, some CFO has got to be looking at their heavy duty diagnostic tool sales saying, why are these down, or why are these flat? What's going on there? And they probably have no idea, and they all think it's marketing and the functionality, but it's really the supporting of the customer and providing all those resources to make that customer successful is really what drives this whole thing. I view in the HD industry.
And ironically, some of them, Snap-on, for example, with the Nexic line, and how they take care of the customer on the automotive side and how they take care of the customer on the heavy truck side is completely different. And that's that divisional thing within Snap-on. Every division that they have operates independently, and they take care of customers in a much different way. The automotive industry itself is also much more mature than what the heavy truck market is in terms of the technology. So the CAN systems that the heavy truck guys are dealing with today, the automotive guys were dealing with, starting in 2003. So, that they've gone through that quantum leap in technology, and you also have the benefit of right to repair. So there's a lot more access to information, training, and resources in automotive that just simply isn't available without somebody like yourself giving that to the heavy truck guys.
Yeah, it's all paywalled is what we call it, right? So if you're working on a truck and you need a wiring schematic for an International 4400, good luck getting that out of the dealership without buying a, $2,000 a year subscription fee for their information. And then, now I need one on a Mac. Now I got to go figure out how I buy that from Mac. And by the way, I can't do that instantly. I got to fill out a form and it takes 2 days to get a response back. And they make it really tough for people outside the dealerships to fix commercial trucks. And I get it. They want to protect their brand and their identity and their dealer network. I totally get that. But on the same hand, they're all trying to talk now about we have uptime. You fix quicker than anybody else, all those things. I'm like, which way is it, guys? Do you want to let your customers fix their trucks and have great uptime? Or do you just really care about protecting what you have? And they're trying to walk that line. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes. And you're right. There is no right to repair act for HD like there is for a heavy. So heavy, they had the memorandum of understanding that was signed like 4 years ago. Maybe it's even 5 years ago now. And it's funny, when that came out, everybody in the industry was so excited how it was going to change everything and they're going to access to everything. But it was written or not. Yeah. But it was written so vaguely that you can't really, it didn't change anything at all. It made it worse, actually. So, it's crazy how still nothing's changed. People are trying to change it. At the end of the day, we just said, you know what, we got to go build all of our own repair information because it's not going to happen any other way in this industry. And at the end of the day, we've spent millions building that stuff. And, we've essentially at this point been giving it away for free so we can sell tools. And now that story's changing a little bit and we're putting platforms together and doing some other stuff. So, again, build the moat deep and wide.
There you go. So tell us a little bit about the early days. You mentioned briefly early on about the kitchen table and the garage. So walk us through those early days and, the decisions that you have to make, the struggles that you go through. So this is post you deciding I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to do this full time. We're going to push forward and make something of this. Pick up from there.
Yeah. So I remember, I'll talk about from two sides, the personal side and the business side. So, on the personal side, I remember that first day I quit my job, no more salary coming in. Me and the wife, it was scorched earth, right? We got rid of every subscription, every extra expense. Or like, we gotta figure this out. I got two kids. How is this going to happen? And I remember that very first day, my wife, hey, it's lunchtime. So I came out there, sat with lunch. 2 kids are there. My wife's like, well, how are sales today so far? I'm like, there's 0, and you can see that look of fear in her eye. Like, oh boy, like what did we get ourselves into here? So that was
eat a half a sandwich.
Exactly. It was going to be beans and rice there if that would have kept going for a while. But and that was our conversation every day at lunch was how much, right? And that went on for quite a while until things kind of stabilized. So that was number one on the personal side. And we were fortunate where we saved up a bunch of money. We didn't have any debt really as our house payment at the time. So we've been always fiscally conservative. So that gave me enough runway to know I can do this thing for a while. So that was one side of it. The second side was it sucked because my office was like right next to the front door. And every time somebody walked by the street, our little little 13-pound dog would just start yipping and hollering, right up to the window. And of course, you're on the phone all day because you're sales, your tech support, your everything, right? So a lot of times customers, hey, is that your dog? I'm like, and this is pre-COVID days, right? Nobody was working at home in those days. I'm like, yeah, that's my dog, and I'm working from home today, and like, and every day, but that's the way it was. And then of course, you get the your 1-year-old and 3-year-old come in there and start screaming their head off or whatever event was happening in the house. So those are you look back on them, they're funny now looking back on them. And then I end up hiring an employee. So he was actually a neighborhood kid. He had finished high school, going to community college, working at the local pizza joints, making pizzas and subs. And he became really now the oldest tenured employee of the company. He's still with us today. His name's Riley. And he literally was in charge of just packing stuff up in the garage because my wife got sick of me running a tape gun at 10 o'clock at night out in the garage, that big noise it makes every time you do that thing to it. Right. It would wake her up and wake the kids up and all that. So Riley was kind of the first employee there. And even then, it was still meeting a lot of people that was local in South Carolina. So when I tell people I was literally selling laptop kits out of the trunk of my car, I was literally selling laptop kits out of the trunk of my car at truck stops or wherever I had to go meet people at. So then it was easy. You knew everything going on in your company. You had a lot of people, a lot more different today. And, I don't think I even know half of what goes on over here anymore, it feels like. But it's the way the business works as you kind of grow up.
Awesome. So was it your intention early on to have your own business, A, be an entrepreneur, and B, in this industry?
Yeah. I mean, so own business, no. Like when I quit my full-time job, my thought was, cool, I'm going to go work on my laptop. We have a pool at our house. I'm going to watch the kids swim. I'm going to go on walks every morning. I'm going to enjoy this time. And, in hindsight, I just couldn't help myself. I think I tried it one day hanging out by the pool, trying to work. And I'm like, I can't do this. I gotta go all in. If I'm going to do this, I got to go and make it work. And again, I think a lot of it was kind of that fear was kind of the fuel. Like, man, I got to make this work. Otherwise I'm not going to have a house with a pool and healthy kids. Right. And, be able to provide for them. So that aside, the industry side of it, I've been around commercial trucks and off-highway equipment since I was a little kid. My father and my great grandfather actually started a company back in Minnesota that did ready mix concrete work, right? So they had the ready mix trucks. And I grew up going with my dad on Saturdays and sometimes Sundays to help him batch trucks and load trucks with concrete and being around them all the time. I drove a truck when I was a little kid. I was on excavators and bulldozers and forklifts and all that stuff before I had a driver's license. That was just kind of the norm for how we grew up as kids. And then my family, I went to college. I went to go get my computer engineering degree. And my family, they had a really good year and they decided they didn't want to pay taxes. My family hates paying taxes and their best solution is just go buy something. So they decided to go buy out the local Western Star truck dealership franchise, who was in the middle of failing. So they bought that. I'm at college. I actually got kicked out of college for bad grades. So I came home, tail tucked between my legs. And I ended up working for my family at the truck dealership. And I really fell in love with it. And at first it was just doing IT stuff and helping them hook up their computers. Then they bought a business system and they didn't know how to use a computer. So I had to train everybody. Then they need help putting all the parts stuff in there and they need help ordering parts. So I just kind of worked my way up through a truck dealership. So although my family absolutely failed at that business over the next couple of years, I really fell in love with it. And when my family ended up selling that business, I had the choice to go work for the family in the concrete business, or I had the opportunity to go work for the person that bought the company. And I chose to work for the person that bought the company. So it's been in my blood for a long time now. And it's been great to have that experience to see how that whole industry works from the side of repair. And I think those years and plus what I did afterwards, after I left them, I sold trucks. I was a service manager. I was a parts manager, director of IT marketing. So if you can name a function inside a truck dealership besides HR, I've probably done it. Which really gave me the foundation. I tell people all the time, I could never do what we've done at Diesel Laptops if I didn't have all that experience before, because it was just invaluable. And I even look at the 10 years of my previous employer before they asked me to kind of resign or sell my business. I got paid 10 years of training is the way I view that whole thing. And as much as I dog them a lot for making me make a decision, probably the best thing that ever happened to me was someone making me force forcing that decision upon me to quit or stay with them. So
Yeah, all of
it all
those
worked out in
roles.
the end.
Yeah, all of those roles give you the opportunity to empathize with every part and piece of the customer that you're dealing with, which also, if you can empathize with them, then it's a lot easier to bring that value. It's easier to recognize where they're struggling.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's no way I would understand what it takes to repair a truck if I wasn't a service manager, a service writer. If I would never understand how parts source their parts and how they price their parts and how they bought their parts and how they did all those things with truck parts, if I wasn't a parts manager for a couple of years. So you kind of put all those pieces together, plus my IT background, and the business background, the lessons I learned from my father. I kind of look at it like, man, I got groomed for this job, and nobody really realized it until it kind of happened. And I think a lot of times entrepreneurs, you see a lot of, I'll call them kids now, right? I'm 42. I guess I can call 20-year-olds kids. You see a lot of entrepreneurs are typically more like those 20-year-olds with high ambitions, and they want to go do things and change the world. And I didn't do the thing at Diesel Laptops until I was 36. So it's never too late for people to go really start and go do something. And it's funny how things find you when you're out there and you start really questioning why things work and how things work, and start thinking about things just a little bit differently than the way they've traditionally been done. And all of a sudden you find a lot of opportunity in front of you.
So share some funny stories. All of that experience has to come with a lot of laughter throughout the years.
I'll tell you, I can look back at them and laugh now, but I wasn't laughing when they happened. So I can give you a couple of those. It's funny when people need to understand, when you have a small company and it's just you and a couple people, when you grow, things just get chaotic and processes get broken, have to be reevaluated. Lee, you've known this. You've grown your company too. You've had things happen to you. So, for example, we had I hired someone. She was like employee number 8 or 9 in our company. It's when I had my first rental spot, and she came in to do my bookkeeping. And as we got bigger, we realized she was kind of horrible at bookkeeping. So we moved her to HR, and she was like she was a huge cheerleader for the company. Right. It's
right.
Loved Diesel Laptops, talked about it all the time. And we had this is about a year and a half ago now, we had just hired our VP of HR because we realized we needed someone stronger in there. Literally his first week on the job, we find out that person had been submitting false employees on payroll, getting physical checks made. Then they would come in the mail. She would get them because she got all the checks that would come in the mail for payroll that were not electronic. She'd pull out the fake ones. She'd hand me the stack of the real ones to sign. Then she would forge my name on it, and she would forge the employee's signature on the back and direct deposit it into her account.
She was an entrepreneur all into herself.
Yeah, but it's and that, and by the way, she ended up getting arrested at her next job, and, we got the mugshot and all that stuff. And she's still under, they haven't settled with her yet, but
I don't know that I would ever look back and laugh at that. Just me personally.
It was like, what? I wasn't even mad. It wasn't, it was my fault at the end of the day, right? I didn't put the right people in there. I didn't have the right controls, the right processes. I had too much trust in somebody. And, we just had to let it go. I mean, there was another one 3 years ago. We sell on Amazon, and we get deposits every other week. And I'm watching, I kind of would keep an eye on it. It's it's like 44 grand was this deposit, and it didn't come. And we're like, that's kind of odd. Usually it's here this day every week. And we talked to Amazon, like, sometimes it takes longer. Give it like another 5 days. 5 days roll by, still no money. I'm like, okay. So what do? We go look, and we find that somebody went into our Amazon account, hacked into it somehow, some way. Maybe it was this HR person, who knows, right? But they went into it. And what we come to find out is they changed the bank deposit routing information to some other bank out in California. And literally a $44,000 deposit got rerouted. So of course, the first thing is we get pissed at Amazon, right? And Amazon looks at it. They're like, well, somebody at your company using one of your computers with one of your authorized logins did this. And like, furthermore, you guys received an email notification that the bank account was changed. And furthermore, you guys chose not to set up 2-factor authentication on your seller account.
And then you're like, okay, so I'm going to look into that.
Yeah. So, I mean, at the end of the day, so you'd go talk to, and all the emails were going to like a generic email box that our sales department monitored. I'm like, hey, did you guys not see this email that came through from Amazon? They're like, dude, we get 75 to 100 emails a day from Amazon. We don't look at them all. We don't have time. I'm like, you know what? You're right. And, at the end of the day, whose fault was it that we didn't have two-factor authentication and we were using shared logins? Totally my fault at the end of the day.
Right.
So, I looked at it and I was like, I can only be mad at myself. I mean, we just made a $44,000 mistake. Let's be glad it wasn't $440,000. Let's be
Right.
thankful we have the money in the bank account to absorb it. It sucks. It's not going to kill us. It's not going to hurt us. And we're going to learn from this, because that could have had a couple more zeros at the end of it now. And that'd be not a good thing to happen today. So
Can I borrow one of your logins?
so we are, oh God, we've gone through so many security protocols over here now, and you got 150 employees and they're constantly sharing stuff, and it's tough. I don't think employees realize how much exposure a business has in the hands of a wrong person for access for things. And as a business owner, it gets hard to trust people after those things happen to you. So, I can say, yeah, they stuck to the time. We look back at them now and I'm like, you know what, that was a lesson. We learned from it, and we're just going to move on. And, we can laugh at it now and how stupid we were and how we shouldn't have done those things. And I think people need to realize every time you make a mistake, it's a chance to learn something about yourself and about your company and be a little bit better. And, those things happen to us, not the theft stuff, but little things that don't work well happen all the time. And our employees are now really focused on how do we prevent that from happening again, so it doesn't become a problem again. And you do enough of those things and all of a sudden you start running pretty smooth. So I think we're there now.
So one of mine with you, funny stories that always sticks out in my mind, and the people that were working with me at the time, this is ingrained in them forever. So one of your production ladies sent over, she was doing a text pack form or something, and she sent something over, and they sent it back and said, we need Tyler's John Hancock on this. Go ahead and have him sign it and send it back. So she sent it back over, and she signed Tyler's John Hancock.
I didn't even know about that one.
Yeah, I never shared it with you, but so like Bill and Jesse and the guys that were here, they were like, she put what?
That is funny.
Yeah, so I guess she didn't understand the phrase there or where it came from, but yeah, that sticks with us. So
the story I always like to say is, like, the very first time I talked to you on the phone, we were evaluating Texa and all this stuff. And, I had just went through the whole thing with Bosch, right? And Bosch ended up being a complete that over promise, under deliver. That was totally what happened to us on the Bosch product. We had a lot of pissed off customers. So I called you up and, you convinced me how great Texa tool was. And I'm like, great, I'm going to buy one, but I go, but if this tool doesn't work, I'm sending it back to you and I want a full refund. Right.
There were other words in that too.
There probably was. So, and that was a lot of money at the time, right? I'm still by myself at my house. I haven't hired employees, and, it was at that time a risky thing to buy one unit, I guess. Right. So bought the one, and I'm like, you know what? And you specifically said, Tyler, call me so I can help walk you through the first time you connect to some trucks. And I'm like, what?
I got this.
I got this. This is what I do, right? I'm used to laptops. I got this. And I remember going out there, and I went to a store, to a local shop, let me test equipment. And I could not hook up to a single thing and do anything. And I'm like, son of a gun, this is another Bosch situation. Like, I called you up. I'm like, you need to take this back. Like, you lied to me, blah, blah, blah. And to your credit, you totally talked me off the ledge there and got me back out there and walked me through a couple things. And, if that doesn't happen, or if I would have took a more harder stance there, or that thing could have went a million ways sideways, I'm not here today. So are not a lot of other people, and Diesel Laptops probably doesn't even exist. So it's funny how those little things like that turn out down the road to be these huge things that happen with your company and some pivotal moments inside your company. And you never know where opportunity is. And if you'd have told me then what you thought we could do selling the Texa product line, I would have told you you're absolutely nuts. That'll never happen. And
right.
Here we are.
It's not possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I remember saying, man, if we could just sell, I think it was like 10 units a month, like I would be happy as heck.
Right.
And now we're obviously many magnitudes higher than that at this point. So it's really, perception changes as you get bigger and you learn. Right. So, I feel wiser now than I did 5 years ago, and I'm sure I'll feel that way 5 years from now.
Yeah. Yeah. Me too. So, and in some ways, I also feel um, that there's so much more I have to learn. So I feel wiser, but I think my eyes have been open to the fact that there's so much more out there for me to learn yet.
Yeah, it's amazing how much I learn every single day here still. So we use Slack for all our employees, and we have different channels for tech support and sales and everything else. I would still say, even at this point, I learned some little new nugget of information every single day just watching our tech support and our salespeople talk amongst each other and get questions asked. And it all goes back to what I said earlier with the traditional distribution model. It is just so hard for that end guy that doesn't do it all day, day in and day out, to adequately answer and support that end user when they buy it. And it's just a completely different animal, this HD side and the off-highway side and the marine side and all this stuff. It's different expectations from a completely different customer base. And you got to be on it. And the first time you sell that guy a $7,000, $8,000, $9,000, $10,000 tool and it doesn't do what they said, and you couldn't help them or give them an answer, they are
It's
pissed.
going sideways. Yeah, it's definitely going sideways.
It takes one time. You could be great 50 times, and that one time, and it all comes back to doing the things you should do as a business. Communicate with your customers. I always tell my employees, the first time you have a customer tell you, stop communicating so much with me, I'm like, you did your right job. And and it's hard to do, but that's really what people want. They need help, and they want to fix trucks. They want to get them out of their shop and keep moving forward. And if we're the thing preventing them from doing that, we're the problem, not the truck. And we need to be the solution.
We have a guy like that everyone in the company knows his phone number when he calls in. So when they see it on the caller ID, and he answers. He starts the conversation every time with, "It's broke. It don't work." That's that's how he starts the conversation.
So, like, on that note, I don't know if you knew this or if I told you this, maybe I did, but the very first tool that I sold with you got returned to us because they said it didn't work and it had issues, right? And looking back on it now, that tool didn't have any issues. The customer just wasn't trained in how to use it. I didn't have the right knowledge in order to help satisfy that customer. I wasn't responsive enough. I didn't have enough people there to help get with them right away. Right. And you have to do those things in our industry, man. It's not automotive where people can go rent a car and just go find something else to use for a while. Like, it's their truck. It's making money for them. They got a driver stuck somewhere. It's got to go. And you can't be in the way. So it's, like I keep saying, different industry, different customer base. You have to have a different mentality. And I think I can go back to, I think that's why the traditional model doesn't work as well in this, just because of those kind of different needs in our market.
Right. So, what's your biggest win so far?
Oh God. I mean, making it 5 years, I guess. I mean, yeah, there's a lot.
That's a big milestone. Yeah.
I mean, if you had to look, so I can talk about like a big win. We have one big customer that about. I can't say their name, but I really believe it's the biggest aftermarket diagnostic tool deal in American history, and potentially the world when this thing's all said and done. So, to go from being selling the trunk of my car to selling to companies that have market capitalization in the billions and buying that much tools from us, it is amazing to see how far and how fast we've come and the response we've gotten from the market. But we don't want to forget those guys, because that's our bread and butter, is still those independent shops. And those guys buying one unit, they're just trying to fix stuff. So, that would be our biggest win, I'd say, to this point. And then I look at, what I'm most proud of. And I would say it's the fact that Diesel Laptops got here. In 5 years, we still exist, where we didn't do this thing. A lot of people think you need to go, they see what we have, and people think you need to go raise millions of dollars to go build your business and do those things. And we cash flowed this entire thing. And we're sitting here now. And when COVID hit, I'm sitting here and I'm like, you know what? We have no debt. We got cash in the bank, and we're going to ride this thing out, and we're going to pivot faster than anybody else. Our competitors are going to pivot, and we're going to come out of this thing stronger than we went into it. But if I had all that debt and didn't have all the experience and all those things we built the last 5 years, it's a totally different story. And we probably couldn't have done some of the things that we did. And I look at it now, I got our May numbers, and May ended up being one of our most profitable months ever during a pandemic. And it wasn't because we sold more, we actually sold less, but because we were able to reduce expenses while keep everybody on payroll. And we were able to adapt and change quick. You learn a lot about your company through hard times. And that's what I'm most proud about, is what we built here in 5 years and how we did it, and the position we put ourselves in for the next 5 years, was if I had answered that question.
Okay. Biggest defeats?
Besides people stealing from me all the time.
That's and that's bad on the financial part, but
Yeah.
I mean, I get when you own the business, it's when they steal from you, it's personal.
It is. I mean, there's been, there's that side of it. There's the side people don't see on the loss of time I've given up with my family, right? So, when you're growing a business, and I couldn't help myself, I probably went too far to the extreme, working the hours I did and all that. But I really, then I'm so exhausted by the time you come home, you got young kids, and you just want to just turn it all off, right? And watch TV or zone out for a while. So, can I say definitely my relationship with my wife suffered there for a while? Absolutely. Was I not as close to my kids as I probably should have been? Absolutely. And those are things really this last year that I've really said, hey, I need to go fix that, right? Businesses come and go. Things are going well at Diesel Laptops. I didn't spend as much time over here on the personal side of my life that I should have, and my health as well. I really ballooned up there pretty good. I've dropped a bunch of weight this year as well. So I've really tried to say I need to get these things in order, and it's not just for me personally, but if I can get my personal life in order and have a happy family, happy wife, happy life, right? So if I can make sure I take care of that, my kids are going to be around forever. I got to set good standards for them. And I think we've hired some tremendous people here at Diesel Laptops, where I don't need to have my fingers in every pie over here anymore. I got enough smart people that can figure it out and are accountable to do that for Diesel Laptops. So, in other words, biggest defeats, I don't know. I don't feel like we've ever lost a huge sales deal somewhere to a customer. I haven't really stumbled across that as all. There's a couple of things I wish we would have done differently, little things, at the end of the day, but I learned from them. So yeah, it all kind of worked out in the end. We'll see. It's still a lot of pivotal moments, a lot of irons in the fire at Diesel Laptops. I've chosen to go spend millions of dollars building things that generate zero revenue for Diesel Laptops. I might sit here a couple of years from now and be like, man, that was the worst thing I did. I spent millions there and it failed, and I could have put that money in my pocket and, bought an island somewhere or whatever. Or it could be the best thing I ever did because it generates a huge return for Diesel Laptops. But I'd rather go down trying to figure it out than not find out. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's the strength of that's the strength and the curse of leadership, right? That's why you make those decisions.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, a lot of people around me are always, as management, they're like, man, that's a big risk you're taking. I'm like, yeah, it is. None of them are so big where if this doesn't work, Diesel Laptops fails, right? They're like, if this doesn't work, we're out $500,000, right? There's those things. But I never take a risk big enough to cause the whole thing to crash. And I always go into everything like, okay, if this fails, what's the worst case? If it works, what's the best case? And usually the best case far outweighs that worst case scenario. And it's tough because you got to, it's not just me anymore and my kids I'm trying to take care of. It's 150 employees and their families that all depend on us for a paycheck every single week to execute as a company. So we have to go do those things. Otherwise things don't work out.
It's a big responsibility, isn't it?
It is. And that's the part I really struggled with, is like, okay, am I more responsible to my wife and kids to spend time there, or to the 150 employees to make sure we have a sustainable business and their families get a paycheck, right? And it's a hard line you have to walk. And, it finally got to the point where we have enough people to get those things done for us and help us out. So it's a big responsibility, and you got to you got to pick a path and just go with it, right? And just know there's no walking back on it.
I'm a firm believer that I think everybody should own a business of some sort at some point in time, even if it's part-time, just so that they have a greater appreciation for what it's like to be that person that has to take on that responsibility.
Oh, I totally want my kids. I mean, he's 9 now. He's not quite old enough yet, but when they get a little bit older, I want them to start a little side hustle. I mean, mowing lawns or a craft beef jerky business, or just
Right.
just start figuring out the way business works and how to make money. And once they understand that, those are life skills that you take with you forever, whether you have your own business, you're working for someone else. And, you know, before I was a business owner, I looked at a lot of, you hire a contractor, man, why are they so expensive? Why this, why that? Totally understand once you're a business owner what
Right.
margins mean and why those are important,
Yeah.
and why you have to charge for things that don't seem reasonable. But it's just, the way business works.
And I used to do so much stuff myself, to save money, as a former mechanic. It's only in the last 2 years where I've actually I don't trust other mechanics because I've worked with them.
Yeah.
So I've always done my own work, but I don't have the time. It's I just don't have the time. It's much more worth it for me to go pay somebody else than and be able to focus somewhere else.
I'm at the same point, and I do that in two parts of my life. One is employees. There are things here I could easily do myself, but it's like, you know what? Time is money. We got to go pay someone to do that so we can keep focusing on these other things that only we can do. So that's one thing. And the same thing, I do not want to mow the lawn at my house and spend an hour doing that once a week. Like, let's just go pay somebody their $70 and they can come do it, and I never have to pick up a lawnmower again. That's well worth an hour of my time at this point. Especially with work, family life. It's hard to balance it all. And I'm totally on the same mindset as you. So I'm gonna go pay someone to do stuff that will save me time more than anything else.
I'm almost there with the lawn. We have right around 3 acres and a bunch of weed eating. So that's literally, I could hire someone to cut the lawn and then have a part-time person at the same time. So
Yeah, totally the same mindset. It's and I there's things I enjoy doing. So I'll still do, like, wife needs a little project around the house or that type of thing, or build something small. I'll do that. I don't mind. I just don't want to go spend 5 hours doing something where I can just pay someone a couple $100 and they can take care of it for me. I only have a couple hours every night to relax, and I only got my weekends, and I want to spend it with my family and relaxing. So I got to take advantage, especially with it being the summer now in the South here, and the lakes call my name about every Thursday. So I feel like I was
I
getting
can
itchy to get
relate.
out here. Yeah.
I just came back from a 2-week vacation. I've never taken a 2-week vacation in my entire career.
Yeah.
I was still here probably 4 or 5 days.
Yeah.
The people behind the camera are nodding like yes,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I didn't want to
That was-
see you.
That was a vacation. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a vacation. So, but yeah, the same thing. I'd rather the time that I've spent on the road away from my family is probably the biggest cost to me over time. My wife has seen more of me because of COVID
Yeah.
this year than she has in any year probably in the last 10 or 15 years. She told me the other day, if things go back to normal and you start traveling again, I don't know how I'm going to deal with that because I've gotten used to you being home. So I can appreciate that.
Yeah, I've actually, so, I'll talk about COVID a little bit at Diesel Laptop. So, we shut down the whole place, and we only left about 15 or 20 of us in here kind of in March, April, when all that went down. And now we're up to about 75% capacity now back at the store. And one of the things we implemented was we have a private lab here that does weekly COVID tests for all the employees. So half the employees test on Monday, half of them test on Thursday. And, we never really thought through what would happen if they test positive. And of course, the very first group that goes through, someone tested positive. Like, shoot, well, what do we do? Because,
I wish I would have known. Damn it.
Yeah. And we get our results back the same day. So that employee, then we knew, okay, they'd been there all day. What do we do? And, the first instinct was like, well, shut down the whole place. Let's deep clean it. Let's do that whole thing. And we chose not to, because we said, well, everyone at work is supposed to be staying 6 feet away from each other. Everyone's supposed to be wearing masks if they are within 6 feet of each other. There's hand washing stations. There's sanitizer everywhere. So let's contact trace the person. And of course, the person happened to be in our warehouse that did this, right? So they're touching everything. And at the end of the day, there was 3 employees that he spent, our South Carolina DHAC, our health group. They said the criteria we want you to use is if that employee that was infected was within 6 feet of another employee for 30 minutes and both didn't have a mask on, that other employee should go self-quarantine for 14 days or get retested after 5. So we literally had to empty out our entire warehouse and move some other employees in there. And we kept rolling through as a business. Um, so, with this whole COVID thing now, it's kind of like we've told the employees, look, we're going to test you guys every week and we're going to contact trace and you're going to be safe while you're here. And in that situation, all the employees tested 5 days later and not a single one had it. So they were all able to come back to work. And, at the end of the day, and that player was totally asymptomatic. He was out running track every day. He still is out running track every day. Doesn't feel anything at all. But I look back on now, I'm like, well, you know what? He wasn't here. He was here for 1 day. Yeah, that sucks. But better than him being here for a week or two and possibly infecting everybody. So I think some employees didn't like that at all, that we didn't shut down. And other employees were kind of like, what are you going to do? It's here. It's not going away. And we got to keep running as a business.
Right.
So it's tough decisions a lot of business owners have to make in this really weird time that we have.
So you've piqued my curiosity with that. So how does that work? Because we had one of our part-time warehouse guys. His daughter tested positive, completely asymptomatic. He's asymptomatic, but it just so happened to be on a day where we received a container in. And so it was everybody in the shipping department plus other people from different departments out there helping them, because it was all lifts. So it was big heavy stuff that we had to unload. And then of course we find out the next day, his daughter-in-law tested positive. So how are you getting the testing done? What I found out here is, some of the guys, depending on where they went, they wouldn't even test them. Because the person was asymptomatic, and and some people have test kits, some people don't. How are you getting that done as a company, like internally?
Yeah. So the other problem too is with the delay in tests. So here in South Carolina, if you test today and go through a hospital or a CVS or a drive-through, it's 7 to 12 days you get your test results.
Right.
And by then it's too late. So we had a couple of that situation earlier in the year as well, where an employee, they weren't feeling well. They took a test. They stayed at home. Like, oh yeah, I did test positive. And you're like, well, you've been gone for a week. So what's the point of doing anything now, in our business? Or you've been in another situation where, okay, well, you've been with people for the last 2 weeks and now you found out like what there's no point in shutting anything down at this point. We've all been exposed.
Right.
So, in our case, we got really fortunate. One of our employees, her dad is he's got a PhD and he works at a private lab here in South Carolina. And they've partnered up with the Prisma hospital system, and they are contracted with South Carolina. University of South Carolina wants to reopen. And South Carolina said, how are you guys going to test 30,000 people every week? So that's what his lab got challenged with doing. And they figured out a process, and we do saliva tests. So all the employees come in, we have a tube, and you have to spit 5 milliliters of saliva into the tube. And then you drop your tube off in a little container. And then we bring the container down to the lab. And because it's a private lab, they're not using the same labs that DHEC does and the other the state agencies. And they just run them right there on the spot. And they run each positive twice to make sure there's no false positives. So it's not cheap, but we said we're going to try it for a month, and we're going to see if this is a good thing or bad thing we're doing. We still do the temperature checks, but we've had 3 or 4 employees now that have had COVID, and all of them have passed the temperature check. So we're not sure the temperature check even does any good at this point. So we're all kind of learning as we go, but yeah, we got fortunate. Private lab, not cheap, but we wanted to try it. And more than anything, we wanted to make sure employees like, hey, we're going to do everything we can to make this a safe place for you guys. And the way it's going, we'll probably keep it going for a couple of months. I think the general mentality of most people here in the building is, okay, like you guys import from Italy, obviously, which was hit really hard. We import from China. I think you might guys have some stuff too. So we had China, Italy, and Spain were the 3 countries we import from, and all 3 were the first big 3 to get hit. Right. So at first it was, 10% of the people die. Then it was 4%. And now, in South Carolina, our government's telling us it's 0.23% now passed from this. And it's all, 95% of those people are, elderly or underlying health conditions. So I think a lot of the fear that a lot of people had around here now is kind of evaporating. and employers are just kind of like, it's here, it's not going away. We got to figure out how life moves on. And we tried to explain to them all, look, if diesel laptops can't keep operating as a business, you're not going to have jobs. So
Yeah.
we got to make this thing work, and it sucks, but we're going to do it as safe as we can.
Yeah, I talked to Tom in Australia while they were under the entire country was under mandatory lockdown, and he struggled. Him and Kevin were struggling with getting the employees to understand, getting the sales guys to understand you got to find a way to go sell stuff. If not, I don't need a sales guy. If you're not selling anything, then and we don't have a sales department, then there is no job for you. You do realize that, right?
So that was one of the things we changed really quick when kind of all the lockdowns started happening. Is we were spending just buku dollars on online advertising, and we were trying to sell people, $7,000, $8,000, $10,000 kits. And I'm like, okay, nobody who in their right mind is going to buy a $7,000 to $10,000 kit in the middle of a pandemic while everything's crashing and burning around them. So
with a free COVID test, it could be a promo.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So like, man, we got to get focused on selling other stuff. So I think part of the success we had kind of during the middle of this thing and through the heat of it was being able to pivot quickly and sell some less expensive stuff and focus on renewals and other things that people still needed to get by, but people didn't have to make those big purchase decisions. And we turned off a bunch of the online marketing expense we had, and we turned off a bunch of outside people that we were using, outside contractors and companies to do development work, and just said we're pumping the brakes here because we don't know how bad this thing is going to be. And it was tough for salespeople. The last thing anybody wanted to do is talk about a diagnostic tool in the middle of a pandemic and craziness that was happening on. And, it was scary looking back on it. I mean, to see your revenue drop 25, 35% off a cliff almost instantly is like a business owner's worst nightmare. You always logically in your head think, oh, business went like this for years. If we start sucking, it'll probably go slow like this. And it went like this.
Yeah.
And, we all had to make adjustments pretty quick. And, but we got through it. And like I said earlier, we're coming out a lot stronger than when we went into this thing.
Awesome. So, best advice that you can give somebody. I think you're an excellent example of what's possible in entrepreneurship if you're committed, passionate, and driven. What would be your greatest advice you could give to somebody that's contemplating, entrepreneurship or starting their own business?
Yeah, I mean, on the entrepreneurship side, I would say you're taking a risk, right? But don't take one too big where you're going to put yourself in a horrible situation if it doesn't pan out. Don't go take on a ton of debt. You don't need the Mona Lisa to start with. Start with watercolors. Just build yourself up and get comfortable. It took us, even selling like the Texa product line, it took us 6 or 9 months to really talk to customers, try to sell it, listen to their objections. And every time we got an objection, we'd kind of regroup and say, okay, this is the objection. How do we handle that? And it took us a long time to kind of walk through all that stuff and really figure out how are we going to handle these things and what process and procedures. So for the entrepreneurs, if they're listening, say, just take a risk. It's a risk regardless, but don't take one too big. It's okay to start small and build up, and it doesn't need to be perfect. Don't be afraid to fail. Failing just means you figured out one thing that doesn't work, and now you go into the next plan. And then on the other side of the coin, once you kind of get going, don't be afraid to try to do something a little bit differently than everybody else is doing it. When I started this, everybody thought you had to have door-to-door salespeople selling these things and doing on-site demos and hanging out and showing to people. And I thought that's how it had to get done. And we have 0 outside salespeople that go do on-site demos, right? And we sell a lot of diagnostic tools. And constantly look for problems and look for ways to make those problems go away and turn them into opportunities. So as an example would be our repair information. It was a problem because people were calling us. They didn't know how to fix codes. And I tried to call some people that had that information. They didn't want to allow me to resell it. So I just said, well, I'm going to go build my own then. And I'm going to figure it out. And it was a lot of late nights typing away on a keyboard, building out repair information. But and it worked out great for us in the long run. So think differently. There's always a better way to do something. If someone tells you that is the way it's always been done, that's the exact thing you should be looking at, trying to find a better way to do it.
Awesome. Anybody that wants to reach out to Diesel Laptops can find you how?
Well, Diesel Laptop, just type Diesel Laptops anywhere on the internet. They should hopefully find us. Me personally,
if not, you cut entirely too much out of the advertising budget.
Trust me, they will find us on every platform, hopefully. Or I do have one competitor who's really pissing me off, and they're gonna get their just deserve here in a couple months. But they target our name and have landing pages set up with our name on them. But I'm gonna deal with them separately. But diesellaptops.com. We're all over social media. Personally, the best place that people want to talk to me is LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn all the time. I love posting on there. And that's probably the best way to really follow up with what we're doing here at Diesel Laptops.
Awesome. Tyler, thank you for taking the time to be with us today. I really appreciate it. And, I'm a big fan. Love what you've done with the company. And, I'm glad you took time to share that with everybody.
Yeah, very much appreciate you allowing me to come on the show. It's been a great ride the couple of years we've been working together, and I'm sure we have a lot more of them ahead of us, and exciting times in our industry. So thank you again, Lee. Appreciate being on.
Awesome. Thank you, man.